All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's a Tuesday. It's a different day for us with Kayfabe with Keaton. We're doing it on a Tuesday because Keaton, you had a guest come in and he's a very busy guy, and we had to make this work. So we're coming on a Tuesday. Of course, we are live on both of our channels, and um, great guest today, right, Keaton?
Oh yeah, 100%. One of the indie pro wrestling legend.
And that would be Mike Quackenbush.
Yeah, one of the
What the slogan is again is the man of a thousand holds. Am
yeah the man of
I
a
right?
thousand holds, the master of
Yeah,
a thousand holds.
master of a thousand holds. Yeah, right. So yeah,
Lightning Mike
so
Quackenbush.
and he's got quite a following on YouTube and stuff too
Yeah.
on his channel. So yeah, this is a great guest that we have here, and we're really looking forward to it. Now we don't have a lot of time, so we're gonna kind of just jump right into our questions with Mike, and we're gonna kind of forego any videos and played anything like that. So we're just gonna kind of get right into our interview with Mike and Keaton. I know you've got your list of hotbed questions that you gotta ask, and I'm just gonna let you get to it. So let's bring our guest in, as we said, and we'll get started with it. Here he is. Welcome in, Mike. It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm delighted to be here. It's morning drive time, 97.5 KFB with Crusher and Keaton. Guys, this is amazing. I'm going to play some soft rock songs this morning.
Well, you got that classic radio voice, man.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's nice to see you both.
Yeah, it's great. And Keaton, let's get started. I know you got your list of questions.
What do you got? Let's do it.
So, Mike, you've been involved in wrestling with a author of professional wrestling books, YouTuber, referee, ring announcer, commentator, but most of all, you're a wrestler. So, talk us through your very first wrestling match.
My very first wrestling match. Well, there's kind of two answers to that question. I suppose the more interesting answer is this. So, when I was a senior in high school, when I was in 12th grade, I happened to be the editor of our yearbook. What an esteemed position I held. And I knew as the year was going on, we needed some kind of fundraising event to get our yearbook done. Why is this? I don't know. It's not like we don't charge money, right? Everyone has to pay money for their yearbook at the end of the school year. Anyway, I knew we were going to need a fundraiser. So all along, I'd been hatching this idea that we were going to get a local wrestling company to bring their ring to our high school as a fundraiser. Little did anyone know, me and a couple of my buddies, we were that most nefarious type of wrestler. We were backyard wrestlers in the 90s. Exceptionally taboo back in the day. So sure enough, under the guise of being a yearbook fundraiser, we had this ring brought in, and the understanding was that we were going to put on some kind of show of our own before, the real, actually trained pros put on their show that evening. And that show ended up, our show in the afternoon ended up being quite successful. That day, I wrestled my first match inside a ring in front of about 1,100 people. This would be the best crowd I'd wrestled in front of for years. Wow, did it set the expectations incorrectly for what the years ahead were going to be like, wrestling in front of dozens of fans on the independent circuit. Or at one point, about a year after that match, I wrestled in front of one paying customer in a town of Washington, Pennsylvania. Me and a California-based indie wrestler named Jardy France. We had to wrestle 2 out of 3 falls in front of one paying customer. But on that day, May 20th, 1994, when we were all done in the ring, I was pretty confident that this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And much to the chagrin of my mother, who really wanted a dermatologist in the family, Mike Quackenbush did indeed become a professional wrestler.
And Mike, so I've seen you perform some absolutely incredible moves. One with the match finish against Cesaro, who's also known as Claudio Castagnoli. Absolutely amazing match finish. What's your favorite move you've ever performed?
Well, that's a very good question. As the master of 1,000 holds, and really quickly, I can see from the poster you have behind you, Keaton, you must have a good sense of wrestling history. You must have a mind for it. So you might know the man of 1,000 holds was originally a Scottish wrestler named George Kidd from decades and decades ago. This eventually gets passed to Johnny Saint during the heyday of the world of sport promotion. Only later does Dean Malenko kind of take it on as his own. And thereafter, once Malenko was retired, And after I had wrestled Saint myself in Germany, I became the master of 1,000 holds. I think what I love most about learning something new is when it is complex and yet elegant at the same time. There are wrestling holds which are complex, like for the sake of being complex.
Yeah.
There's a limited novelty to that, don't get me wrong. Every once and again, I like somebody to show me something really fancy. But I also appreciate those which they're really quite elegant, despite having that kind of layer of complexity to them. One of them, which I ended up taking a piece of and incorporating it into a move of my own, is a style of backbreaker. And, there's kind of two families of backbreakers, if we can get really detailed here for a second. So there's a family of backbreakers which are holds, and you can really trace these back almost 100 years, just under 100 years, to when Gotch was in Argentina. But then there's also backbreakers that we think of as impact moves, right? This is often where we're dropping an opponent across our knee. But there are two families, and they're both backbreakers. There are moves and there are holds. Well, there's one that's very popular in Mexico, and it rises to popularity, as best as I can tell, in the 1970s, called La Rayinera. The Rayinera has somebody bowed over your entire back. And I took that piece and broke it off and made it into my move, which is called the Black Tornado Slam. So I would bow someone over my back in the Rayinera, and then I would spin around like an airplane spin.
Yeah.
That's the tornado part. And then I would sit down, dropping them basically as I sat. Not only did this open them up for an immediate pinning combination, there's about 3 different pinning combinations I could do out of it, but I liked how seamlessly these things kind of blended together. Now, when I do it, I'll give myself a little pat on the back here. These days, it looks very elegant. But guys, when I was learning this and practicing it, it was ugly because I did not have very good form on this at all. But after about 9 months of practice with it, I became pretty slick with it. And that, I think you'll go through this yourself, no matter what it is that you do, whatever your art form is, right? Maybe right now you're a podcaster, but maybe a year from now you're a commentator at wrestling. Maybe 6 years from now you're training as a wrestler. Whatever your pursuit is, you have to work toward mastery. And once you're done with the hard work, then you can do the fun stuff. But I was often one of those guys who just wanted to kind of rush to the fun part. And I didn't find much success doing that. I found my best success, whether it's as a wrestler, an author, whatever, a YouTuber. I had to do the hard work first. Then it became fun. Trying to do the fun first, that never worked for me, fellas.
So I loved your matches with Johnny Kidd, who's having his retirement matches as we speak. Johnny, your matches with Johnny Kidd were absolutely incredible, and you can tell you have really good in-ring chemistry with him. What's the key to having great in-ring chemistry?
Well, and you're right. Thank you for that. Thank you for the kind words. This is John's 11th retirement tour, so I don't know. This one might stick. I came out of retirement to wrestle him in his retirement match in May of 2016, and that was his 3rd retirement match. So my personal hope is, and I don't mean to dog my friend. In fact, this is a good reminder. I should email him. This is the time of year we always catch up. I hope he never retires. I don't care how many times he says he's having a retirement tour. John, don't ever retire. You're a wonder. You are a marvel of the mat. And anyone who gets to watch him, not only are you seeing a masterclass in wrestling, but this is a guy who really personifies, I think, the joy I find in wrestling, that very clean, classy, clever British style, which is such a delight to watch. Part of how I think John and I kind of discovered our chemistry together was we were never afraid to do like the little things, I think, which fostered a sense of camaraderie. And yet we do like to poke each other. So I'll give you an example of each. One of the things I love is it doesn't matter where I am. Even if I'm teaching in the UK for one day, John will get on the train and come find me so we can have tea together in the afternoon. So we've developed a camaraderie over the last, I'm going to say 15 or 16 years. It might be even longer than that now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah. It might be closer to 18 years. We will go out of the way for each other, even to just catch up a little bit in person. I realize you can't see it, but on the other side of this Till We Make It banner, there's actually a poster from his career that John gave to me as a Christmas gift one year. It's framed and hung on my wall from a charity show he did for Tony Costas back in 1981. So part of why we have that chemistry is we have a lot of admiration, respect, and love for each other as friends, right? We have a deep camaraderie there. But also, if you get the two of us anywhere near a ring, we are trying to outdo each other. He's like, oh, Mike, I learned this new hold. You ever seen this one before? That's not new, John. That's from 70 years ago. You're not fooling me. Then I'm like, John, let me impress you with something. He's like, oh, that's nothing. I'll show you. So I love the fact that we have a little bit of that in our relationship. I think that's why, at least in the case of John and I, why we have the chemistry that we do. If you go back and watch the series of matches I had with Claudio Castagnoli, the G is silent, Castagnoli, before he signed to become Cesaro with WWE, he and I mean, not only were we great friends, but that's not to say that we aren't anymore. We catch up every month. But when we were in the ring together 3 nights a week practicing, we could really, what I call, play jazz in wrestling. So what I mean by this example is, if you play music, and maybe you do, like you got a guitar on the wall behind you right now, you can play the notes exactly as they are, exactly as the bars are, exactly as the charts are, and you can follow it to the number. But if you become really comfortable and you're confident with the people you're playing with, you can start to dip and weave a little bit. You can start to find a little place to improvise. You can take it on an interesting journey, and you know that the people have your back. That to me is playing jazz. And in wrestling, it's much the same. Because I trained with him, I spent more hours in the ring with that guy than anybody. He moved to the United States to train with me back in 2003. And basically right up until the day he signed. As he was leaving town, he and I had dinner together and bid each other farewell as he left to report for duty down in Florida for the WWE. Because we knew each other so well, we knew the nuances and idiosyncrasies of our wrestling, we could improvise together. We could play jazz. And there's a bit of that in the match that you alluded to, Keaton. The one where that finish clip kind of goes quasi-viral once a year.
Yeah.
The best match finish ever is the title of it on YouTube. It's been watched like 1 million times, and that's very gratifying. I collect no royalties from that, by the way. But what's great about that match is, and it's a short one, right? It burns quick. If you've ever watched the complete match, it's 9 minutes and change. We had enough confidence and trust in each other to kind of go out and find the moments where we could play jazz. That is not to say that there aren't moments in wrestling where you must be very precise. Especially someone like myself, I'm very detail-oriented. I'm sure that comes across in the videos that I make or the way that I wrestle, but I'm a very detail-oriented person. Yes, there's moments when you need that precision, and yet there's moments where you need that trust that says, I'm okay to improvise just a little bit. I don't know that answered your question, but that's what I got for you.
So obviously you created a very successful wrestling company called Shakara Pro Wrestling. It put on some absolutely incredible matches, just like ones you're talking about there with Cesaro. And so what do you think is the top 3 best Shakara matches of all time?
Boy, that's a doozy of a question, my friend. There was one when we did our big annual tournament, King of Trios, was held in the UK one year. We were in Wolverhampton. This was only made possible because of the hard work of a company called Fight Club Pro and their hardworking promoter, Martin Zaki, and they worked overtime to produce this tournament for us in the Midlands. The finals of that year's King of Trios Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate, and Trent Seven against a team from Sendai Girls Pro Wrestling in Japan led by the great Meiko Satomura.
Yeah.
I was doing the live commentary for that match. I think that colors my memory of it a little bit because I was so swept up in the excitement and the energy of that match. I can't divorce that experience of trying to articulate what I was seeing in the ring, and look at it objectively. I love that match. It's got some of the very finest wrestlers in the entire world. To this day, I remain a massive Tyler Bate fan. To this day, I'm a massive Meiko Satomura fan, et cetera, et cetera. So that one sticks out to me. That's a good one. there's a match I can only view through the lens of nostalgia. It puts a certain rose-colored lens on things, and that is when El Generico wrestled the 1-2-3 Kid for Chikara. And this was in the former ECW arena. So we're going back 13, 14 years here, give or take. But part of the reason is because Sean Waltman was willing to reprise the 1-2-3 Kid for this event is part of what made it so special. And I'll tell you a little bit of that story. So you might know, right, for years he was known as Six in WCW. Then he comes back to the WWE after a stint away, and he's called X-Pac. And then for a while... Yes, exactly. That's right. And he pops up a couple other places. AAA down in Mexico. I think he's on Wrestling Society X for the one ill-fated season on MTV, if memory serves. But he's just going by his legal name, Sean Waltman. Huge surprise, it doesn't say 1-2-3 Kid on his birth certificate. So I was inspired by the 1-2-3 Kid. He really gave me permission to dream big and think I could do this one day. When he beats Razor Ramon on Monday Night Raw in May of 1993, it was a massive sea change here in the United States for the acceptance of junior heavyweight style wrestling. The kinds of things that Tiger Mask and Jushin Liger had been doing for years in Japan finally became acceptable on the main stage here in the U.S. He's a great inspiration to me. Eventually, I reached out to him to get him to participate at a King of Trios. And I'd asked him, I said, would you be willing to become the 1-2-3 Kid one more time? It would mean a great deal to me, and I know to a generation of wrestlers who you inspired as well. And I had been warned along the way. They'd said, you can ask, but Mike, he's unlikely to say yes. But lo and behold, he agreed. So, when he turned up for King of Trios that weekend, he still had his full beard and goatee, the whole 9 yards. And there, he looks like X-Pac. He does not look like the 1-2-3 Kid. But backstage, everyone assembled watched as he went up with like a cheap disposable razor and a little bit of shaving foam, covered his whole face in front of the mirror, and stood there and shaved his beard off. So we were all just kind of watching this go down, like, we weren't expecting this. And he toweled off his face, and when he turned around, it was like he'd passed through a time machine. When he turned around, he was the 1-2-3 Kid again. For all intents and purposes, it was 1994 all over. When he went to the ring that weekend, he was nothing short of magical. His match with El Generico on the final night of that year's King of Trios, to all of us watching backstage, to all of us that felt inspired by the 1-2-3 Kid, we were all a little bit misty-eyed watching him do his thing. If we were going to make a list, that match has got to go on it. And I'll be a little self-serving here. I'll throw one of my own matches on the Barbie as well. I was in the main event of the first Chikara pay-per-view. It was called High Noon. And we waited 10 years to crown our grand champion. I've always wondered why new wrestling companies crown a champion on their first show. Maybe try having 2 or 3 shows before you decide it's time for a champion. Also, maybe don't spend that money on a title belt. Maybe do more advertising for your event instead. So I thought, let's wait 10 years. By that point, I think we have a little lasting power. And so we closed that out, the 10th year, with High Noon on pay-per-view. It is the one and only singles match I ever had against my protege, Eddie Kingston. And although I came out on the losing end of that match, and Eddie became Chikara's first grand champion, I take a great deal of pride in that match. When I watch it back, I feel like it still holds up to this day. And personally, I don't care for most of my own matches. I don't like watching them back. I have to do it, right? Self-critique is an important part of being a working pro, no matter what profession you choose. But I still like that match with Eddie. And the promo that he cut before the match remains my all-time favorite professional wrestling promo, period. So those are my 3.
And Keaton, I just got to say, when you talk about Sean Waltman, it just reminds me when I knew him in the PWA when he was the Lightning Kid, even before 1-2-3 Kid. And,
right, those matches with Jerry Lynn back in the day.
Yeah, Jerry Lynn, and Sean and I, we were small guys, but Eddie took a liking to because Eddie was a small guy, so he would give us a break that way. But you're right, he opened the door with Razor Ramon. It exactly what you said. I can't reiterate it enough. A lot of people owe Waltman that are small guys today.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I wouldn't have had a career. My longtime business partner who started the Wrestle Factory with me, Reckless Youth, if he were here right now, not that he's deceased, he's just not on the podcast, he would say the exact same thing. And so too would a generation of guys roughly my age. He gave us permission to try. We would not be here without Sean Waltman.
That's for sure.
Who do you think is the most successful wrestler to come out of the Wrestle Factory?
That's a great question. It depends by what metric you want to measure success. Is success the amount of money that they've earned? Is success whether or not they've wrestled on television? Is success the number of countries they've appeared in? That's difficult to answer, but I feel very proud of a lot of our most famous graduates. You know, whether I mentioned Claudio Castagnoli himself, the Swiss Superman, Eddie Kingston. Certainly, I think about some of our more recent graduates. Lady Frost, who's with AEW, just graduated from the Wrestle Factory right around the time of the pandemic. And in between, there's been a host of others who have passed through, whether it's like a referee, Bryce Remsburg, someone who really went on to find himself on the main stage, Orange Cassidy. But it really depends on the metrics by which you measure success. I think there are a lot of people out there who imagine that if they don't wrestle at the corporate level in wrestling, they don't wrestle for a big corporation that provides a big contract. That's WWE or AEW or New Japan Pro Wrestling. That if where you ply your trade is the international circuit or perhaps the independent circuit, that somehow you haven't had the same level of success. I disagree with that. I think it's down to how you measure success, and you get to decide that for you. There are some people I know who've made millions of dollars in wrestling who don't think of themselves as a success. It's really down to what you value, what's important to you. And despite what anybody might have to say out there, only you get to decide what matters to you.
And so out of all the matches you've seen, what do you think is the best match you've ever put on?
That I personally have been in, or just one that I've seen?
One you've been in.
One that I've been in. Well, I hate all my own matches, Keaton, so that's very difficult. I think, you know, we've alluded to two of them. The match with Eddie at High Noon, that sticks out as one. Like, if I had to watch it, I wouldn't be doing this the whole time. Like, oh, God, this is the worst. The match that Claudio and I had, that same one we alluded to, that was at the Ted Petty Invitational in 2006. And realizing that was 18 years ago makes me feel very old. Athletically, I think it's the best match I ever wrestled. I don't think it's the best story I ever told in the ring. I don't think it's my best rounded performance. But in terms of athleticism, I think that match with Claudio from the Ted Petty in 06, probably it's up there. The match, which probably should have been the last match I ever wrestled, saw me team with Jushin Liger against Jigsaw and the Shard at a Chikara event called the Shoulder of Palace. In that event, I shattered my right leg when, having done a moonsault off the corner post, my right leg landed on the guardrail. So let me tell you, the 13 remaining minutes of that match were among the 13 most painful I can remember. But the fact that I got to stand shoulder to shoulder with my all-time wrestling idol, Jushin Thunder Liger, paints that one into a very specific category that few others can touch. But each time I got to share the ring with someone I idolized, like Eddie Guerrero in 2002, the handful of times I got to team with Manami Toyota, the times I wrestled Johnny Saint, both in Europe and in the US, those are very, very special things to me. There's an old adage that you've probably heard that you shouldn't meet your heroes. They are doomed to disappoint you. And that has never been my experience in wrestling. I got to meet them all, with the exception of the late, great Owen Hart. And what I found was they were all pretty awesome.
And Keaton, before you go to your next question, we're going to bring one in from my co-host over on NWF Canary Kid. He wants to know, does Mike have a preference of coaching, wrestling, or promoting?
That's a good question, Canary Kid. I assume you're from the Canary Islands. Each of them comes with its own type of fulfillment. There's nothing that quite rivals the thrill of performing live in front of the paying customers. There is nothing quite so satisfying as seeing that moment when a trainee or student has the epiphany and something essential connects in their brain that's going to allow them to become a better professional wrestler than they were before the class began. And there's also something very rewarding about seeing your ideas fulfilled in the ring. As the guy who came up with all the stories at Chikara, getting to see some of my more experimental ideas play out and watch how they were either received or rejected by a fan base was in and of itself a type of satisfaction I could never get from either coaching or performing. So each of them is kind of unique in what it offers. I do feel like these days, because the majority of what I do is coaching, that I've really grown to savor the few performances that I still do in the ring. Like, for example, in about 3 weeks, I'll be wrestling in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It'll be the first match I wrestle on that continent. It only took me 30 years to get there. And I'm very much looking forward to that. As a devout student of Argentine wrestling, going back to the formation of Titanes NL Ring, we're talking late 60s, early 70s in Argentinian wrestling history here. I'm thrilled to be doing this in Buenos Aires. And I realize I might walk out and that crowd doesn't care one bit about this skinny white guy from the US, but I'll be delighted to be in the ring doing my thing for those Argentine fans.
And how did you become a WWE Performance Center coach?
My glib answer is dumb luck, but the real answer is a graduate of my program at the Wrestle Factory, Sarah Del Rey, has gone on to become the assistant head coach at the Performance Center. She's now known as Sarah Amato. She answers directly to Matt Bloom. And I think during a phase when they were open to the idea of bringing more guest coaches in, they probably had a meeting and said to everybody, could you recommend someone we haven't tried before? And after they tried every other possible option and everybody else had been exhausted, then and only then were they like, bring in Mike Quackenbush. And then I was very fortunate. From 2016 until about the summer of 2019, I got to recurringly do work for the WWE Performance Center and the NXT brand as a coach, creative consultant, I guess, maybe for lack of a more accurate term. And they gave me a level of access there, which really astounded me. I have never wrestled a single match for the WWE. It was never my aspiration. I haven't even done a sort of like miscellaneous job. You know, you can get extra work for the WWE where if they need somebody to load an injured wrestler into the ambulance, you can play the part of a medic on an episode of Monday Night Raw. I never even did extra work for them. I was a complete unknown to them. Now, it certainly didn't hurt that they'd hired away a lot of my graduates and all that. That definitely helped. But that first time I walked into the Performance Center, maybe the first 5 or 6 times I walked into the Performance Center, I was filled with imposter syndrome. Do you know what I mean by that? Is that term familiar to you, Keaton?
Yeah.
Right? It means that you feel like a fraud and everybody's about to figure out that you don't belong there. Every time I would walk into the Performance Center, and it didn't matter what I was doing, if I was coaching a class out in the ring, or someone had asked me to come and do one-on-one training with them, or I was sitting in at a writer's meeting. One time, I'm across the round table, and the guy sat across from me is Shawn Michaels. And I thought, what on earth am I doing here? Like, I don't belong in this meeting. But I did my best to always tamp that down. Tried real hard not to let on that I was like, oh, I do not belong here. And I just showed up. I would do the best work that I could do. And at the very end, they were very kind. They made me a couple very generous offers to move to Florida full-time and work for them. It just wasn't the right deal for me. But I look back on my time at the Performance Center very fondly. No matter what job they assigned me to do, and they definitely tested me in different ways, I think they wanted to see if I could produce television for them. I got to sit and do a little bit of that for an NXT taping. They wanted to see what I would do if I got to run a live event for their brand. I really came to relish the fact that I knew every day I went to that job, I was going to be challenged in a new way. And I had to place aside my feelings of being just a fraud who didn't know what he was doing and do the best work I possibly could. And I knew if I didn't do it up to their standard, somebody would probably pull me aside the next day at work and tell me as much. But in all the years I was doing that work, that never happened. So I feel very fortunate as a guy who has wrestled, exclusively at the independent circuit and the international circuit, that I found such acceptance when I was plying my trade up at the corporate level. I would have never predicted that for myself.
And how did you become so big on YouTube?
Well, you might be able to better answer that than I. I'm 48 years old. Certainly, I'm a product of the cable TV era of wrestling, not the social media era of wrestling. I mean, you want to talk about what fuels my imposter syndrome? Somebody calls me a content creator. Please don't say that out loud. A YouTuber? I'm cringing. My soul is dying as you say that out loud. I really don't understand. There are days where I'm like, my channel should be way bigger. There are other days where I'm like, I can't believe 12 people watched my video today. I go back and forth about it all the time. But like anything else, I just try to do the best work that I can do, with the time that I have, with the resources that are available to me, right? I don't have the most expensive lights or fancy microphone. I don't have any of that jazz. I just try to do the very best that I could. And what underscores the work I do on Till We Make It, my YouTube channel, is this. As I told you at the top of this discussion, when I first snuck into wrestling, I was a backyard wrestler. I knew nothing. I was faking it, hoping I would make it. But the lack of information, the fact that I didn't have the training, the fact that I didn't have the knowledge, really did handicap the earliest years of my career. Here I am now, 30 years later, and you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who respects quality training and education in pro wrestling more than I do. It's a really ironic twist when you consider where I started my whole journey. But if you consider it in its totality, maybe not. Because I had so many of the worst injuries of my career because I did not understand how to do techniques properly or to protect myself in the ring, that I arrived at a place where I knew I desperately needed training, education, knowledge, and experience. And I know out there, probably right now, is the next Mike Quackenbush. And he desperately needs the kind of information that I put up for free on my YouTube channel, Till We Make It. Maybe that will help him to do more in wrestling than I ever could.
So I understand until we make it, it gives out loads of advice of helping wrestlers and helping people to become wrestlers. And I'm also subscribed to it, and I watch it all the time. So what's the best piece of advice you can give a young trainee wrestler?
The best piece of advice I could give a training wrestler. Boy, these are hard questions, Keaton. Is it always this hard? Crusher, is this how it always goes on this show?
Well,
beating everybody up?
Keaton likes to ask that one because he's going through his junior training at NAPW in Ireland. So he's in junior training right now. So that's one of the reasons that he asks that question to all his guests.
Well, I don't know if this is the best, but I'll share this one with you. I think it's not said enough. There is no such thing as a perfect wrestling match. There's no such thing as a perfect promo. There's no perfect show. There's not even a perfect day at wrestling training. Don't chase perfection. It is an impossible ideal that we as flawed human beings will never attain. Chase mastery. Because you can master techniques. You can go to training, learn something tonight, and you could master it. So don't set for yourself an impossible ideal. It's a route to frustration, and eventually that frustration, it will become bitterness. And that will make you stop enjoying the thing you once loved. It's really important to stay connected to your passion for wrestling. To do that, chase mastery, not perfection.
That's good advice.
And so I've Mike Quackenbush has been a commentator and he's done loads in wrestling, mostly a pro wrestler, promoter. What's next for Mike Quackenbush?
After this, I'm going to have a bit of a lie down. I think I'll take a nap and then, I don't know, probably make a chicken sandwich. In the future, so you may know, I have written 10 books about professional wrestling. So my first came out in 98. It was called Fantastic Finishers. My most recent one, you could grab it off of Amazon.com or on Audible.com. It's called Pro Wrestling History, 6 Threads in 16 Decades. And I trace only 6 threads through pro wrestling history. Incidentally, there's a foreword in the print version that got cut out of the audiobook. I think it's important context. Why did you do that to me, Amazon? I don't appreciate that. But if you want to trace, for example, the emergence of tag team wrestling, well, that's one of the 6 threads that I follow in that book. Well, I'm currently working on my 11th, and that's probably what's next. On the other side of that nap and the chicken sandwich, I should get back to work on my next book. It is tentatively titled Your Best Match. I had really thought I was going to have it done for the holiday gift-giving season this year. This seems unlikely. The drafting of this book is taking way longer than I thought it would, and I'm not going to put it out until I'm 100% satisfied with the finished draft. Once or twice in the past, especially during my career working for the magazines, I wrote for Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, Wrestle America, Inside Wrestling, and others. Sometimes you just had to deliver an article on deadline if you didn't want your editor to call you up on the phone and tear you a new one. So, having come up with magazine experience where I often had to publish articles I was not satisfied with, I feel very, very certain this book will not come out until I am confident in the final draft. So that's right ahead for me. I've spent a lot of this year canvassing North America on the Till We Make It tour. I drop into a school for 3 or 4 days. I teach anywhere between 8 and 10 classes, and then I go on my merry way to the next stop. I'm about to depart for South America. So I'll be touring Argentina and Chile, and I'll be down there teaching a total of 18 classes. I'll get back just in time for the U.S. holiday Thanksgiving. And then at some point in December, I might take a day off. That's what's next for me. What's next for you, Keaton? What you doing?
Well, I'm just going to continue this show and then hopefully become successful indie wrestler. So yeah, that's next for me.
It's all uphill from here. After you've had Mike Quackenbush on the show, you can only go up from here, buddy. It's going to get way better after this.
And so, speaking of comments, here's one from Wrestling Insider. He says, Mike is a legend. I could listen to him all day. Such a cool guest, guys.
Oh, well, thank you very much,
Wrestling Insider is one of our regular watchers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been fascinating. Mike, I had no idea on a lot of this. And as I'm listening, I was just, it was very, very fascinating. I normally would interject more, but I know we were short on time. And I want to make sure Keaton got all his questions in because he had a list of them, as you know. So,
did we knock them all out? Did we get to them all, Keaton?
Yeah, got them all.
We did. Fabulous. I'm delighted by this. Who knows? There might come a time somewhere down the line where you and I get to cross paths. I appreciate you probably have quite a bit of training ahead of you. And as long as my body holds out, will I continue to do the thing that I love? And that is sharing my passion for pro wrestling with others. Although a lot of it happens now through the medium of YouTube, as you know, I'm out there all the time, crisscrossing the globe, teaching seminars and special classes. And because I have family that's originally from Ireland, that's always been on my personal bucket list. So if you know somebody over there that's dying for a Mike Quackenbush seminar, you should put them in touch with me. And who knows, before you know it, maybe I'll be tying you up into one of those 1,000 holes.
Yeah, that's been great, man. So yeah, thanks a lot, Mike, for coming on. I know that you have a set schedule and everything. So, but we really appreciate you coming on with this, Keaton. I know you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, and best of luck with everything and that you're doing here, especially going forward, and with the book coming out soon to come here when you have it ready.
Well, thank you very much. It was a real pleasure, guys, and it's always nice, when I get to do these with people who really do know their stuff as well. That makes a big difference to me. So, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, it's been a pleasure, and again, thanks for your time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that was fascinating interview, Keaton. Great guest for the show.
100%, and you probably learned a lot of new stuff as well.
Oh yeah. Like I'm not. Look, I know my stuff, but there's certain things I don't know, and I learned a lot here. Not, like I said, normally I'd like to ask questions too, but I just wanted to, this is your show, so I want to make sure you got your questions in and everything, and that was important here for me. So, that's what I tried to focus with. But let's talk about what we're doing on our next few shows coming up here. I just got to switch to my layers. There we go. So for the next NWF Rewind, it's funny. Mike was talking about backyard wrestling, and it might look like it, but it wasn't, because it was way before that. But we're gonna be going back to Fred Moore Junior High for studio taping 56. And I tell you something, Keaton, this ring was no fun. This was a boxing ring. It had no give. Those are wrestling mat pads, so doing any kind of bumping in here was not fun, as Dixie Day will tell you. But it's gonna be fun. We're gonna revisit this show. I know all of our followers, they love watching this early stuff. I like the later stuff, when we get a little more polished. But and when I started getting in line with Eddie Sharkey, but the early stuff, I know our fans like watching it because they like seeing the development and how we started. But for them, we show the stuff. But it's just my feeling on it, right? You know how I feel on this, Keaton.
Yeah,
But it's still fun to watch. I enjoy going back and reliving the memories and everything. And then on the next Kayfabe with Keaton, we're going to have DD Crooks and Sage Valentine. I'm really looking forward to this one. This is Crooks is probably your best heel in the league, don't you think?
100%.
Yeah.
After this, we're having a lot of big guests coming up, so can't wait to have DD Crooks and Sage Valentine. I know we've been trying to get them on for a while, and certain things didn't work out, but finally we're getting them on. They had they're two of the best heels in Northern Ireland, probably Northern Ireland's greatest tag team.
Yeah, and it's they complement each other really as a heel tag team, and I'm just gonna we had them scheduled before, we had to keep pushing them back, and we're finally gonna get. I'm just looking forward to it. It's gonna be great. I think they're gonna be in the same house and stuff, so they'll both be on the same computer, I believe, when they connect. So that'll be good. Well, Keaton, I know this is a short show today, but it was fun. We had a great interview, great guest, and anything else you want to get out while we're live on the air?
No, I just want to say that was great to have Mike Quackenbush on. He's indie pro wrestling legend. That's probably one of our best ones we've had yet.
Yeah, and looks like Wrestling Insider has got another comment. He says, "I wonder how much a seminar would be to bring Mike to Ireland." Yeah. I wish we would have had that when he was here, but could have asked him. But yeah, that would be cool for you guys to have him come over and do a seminar, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he's actually came to Northern Ireland for seminars before. Not our place. It was before NIPW was around, but he did come to Northern Ireland once for a seminar.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Because I thought he was talking about like it was on his bucket list or something,
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So that'd be cool to see. And then I don't have a graphic for our next forward show, but our next forward show, we had a guest lined up, me and Ricky did, but I don't know if it's going to happen. So now it's just going to be the Canary Kid and Crusher Crossen, where I can give him more of a tongue lashing again and get him in line. He likes to play heel. Well, he's going to get treated like a heel then, right? And Keaton, you say you like it, right? You like that back and forth with us?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it's very good from you and Ricky, who are both. You're an old timer. I don't mean not to be rude, but I'm just saying.
Yep, old school, right?
Yeah, and Ricky, who's new school, so it's good to see two back and forth heat between two sides.
Yeah, we like to. It makes the show fun, and everybody I've talked to said they enjoy. It can get kind of boring otherwise, so they enjoy having that entertainment factor. Brings a little bit of entertainment to it. So, and I kind of like that as well. So, yeah. So I'm looking forward to our next show. We're going to talk about. I don't know if I mentioned it, but Canary Kid and I are going to talk about on that next forward is going to be the evolution of wrestling from old school to new school. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of both, or just discuss how it's changed. It'll be a fun, fascinating conversation that we'll have, and I think it'll be good. And that's what we're going to do on our next one.
That'll be a great topic because pro wrestling always changes.
Yeah. Yep. And I guess too, Keaton. How did it go on the last NIPW show? I mean, you were there.
Oh, it was great. So, Ricky's match was pretty good. Seeing as he had good new gear, and he was up at Nathan complaining about sending Nathan to check in and stuff. So Nathan was being an impartial referee against Ricky and against
Oh, so
Ricky. So
Nathan was the ref.
yeah, so he
Okay.
was slow counting all. Ricky was going for the pin, but probably the best match is Pure Filth versus Chris Mercer and Halfdan. What a match that was!
We'll have to ask Ricky what happened there. I'm kind of curious how that happened because he was supposed to wrestle Nate Maddox. Did they announce what happened with that?
So, Nathan just had to fill in as referee, so then that led to Ricky going up to Nathan and calling him a chicken and saying that uh, he scarred to face Ricky. So then Nathan was doing slow counts and stuff. So it was really good, I suppose, storytelling in the match.
Well, he's one to talk about being chicken. He won't even agree to get in the ring with the 5-timer, Keaton. And he's calling his coach a chicken? I think the Canary Kid needs to look in the mirror. That's what Crossen thinks.
100%.
So, am I going to get a bunch of heat for that? Probably. When he comes on forward next time, I'm going to hear all about it. But you know what? That's okay. I can handle it. So, that's what's fun with me and Ricky. We have fun with it. So, although I don't know if I'm making any friends in Ireland, he's still a baby face, right?
Yeah, still a baby face.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's about it for today's show then. I guess we're going to wrap it up a little earlier. But thanks everybody for tuning in, or if you're watching this in replay, we appreciate that. By the way, I'm very excited to announce that on our NWF channel, we are now fully monetized. So now you might start seeing ads and stuff playing when you watch our stuff, but just be well aware that those ads help now our channel. So it creates ad revenue over on our NWF channel. So took a long time to get there, and we finally hit that threshold where we get the ad revenue now. So it's kind of exciting. So thank you for everybody for watching all of our stuff. And Keaton, you're going to get there too. I mean, your views and watch hours are going up too, I imagine. So
Yeah, they're going up a lot from the very start to now. It's really going high.
Yeah, so it'll just be a matter of time. But all right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you all on our next shows, whether that be in a few days here with me and Dixie Dave with Rewind. And by the way, guys, on that Fred Moore show, that's it's early Fred Moore stuff. Don't expect textbook pro wrestling here. It's not. We're not there yet. Although it's funny, this Fred Moore show is probably like 3 months before our first Armory card. So we had to really get in gear wrestling wise before we went out in front of people like that. So it didn't have a whole lot of time. But I know that was a concern. I don't know if I talked about it in my book, but I know that some of the guys just didn't think we were ready yet to do a public event. With some of the other guys on the show, they were kind of concerned. But I pushed them. I pushed them off the cliff. I said, we're going to do it.
Prove them wrong.
Well, I mean, we probably weren't ready, Keaton. When I look at that first, you've seen the documentary. When I look at the first Armory event, the wrestling was okay, but it still wasn't. It could have been better, and not everybody was at the same level for sure. And yeah, we probably weren't quite ready yet, but we were ready enough. As I always say, we were ready enough.
Ready enough.
Yep. If you don't take chances in this world, guys, it will pass you by. So when opportunity presents itself, you need to grab it by the horns and take it. And always remember that, Keaton. That's my advice. When opportunity knocks, you answer. So, all right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you all on the next show. So long, everybody.